Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I'm continuing on my pandemic projects today, and sometimes I have to go out and find those projects, and sometimes those projects come knocking at my door and find me. And that's the case, so I'll give you a quick preview of some of the stuff I'll be working on. Started some of it already, and then we'll show you the reel today. It's going to be a Newell 229, and we're going to take that apart, show you how it's made and how to service it. I got this from Anthony. Anthony is a commercial boat captain in the New York City area, fishing out of a port called Sea Warren, which is right across from the Staten Island area in New Jersey. And Anthony gave me two Toriums. I have them bagged. I started taking them apart. One of them has an issue with a broken free spool lever. The other one has just issues of dirt, grease, and grime. These are commercial reels. They've been put to the test. They've been fished an awful lot. They need new drag washers. They need a tune-up. They need some parts replaced. We will be working on these in the coming days as soon as I get the parts back. So that's preview number one. Anthony sent me in two bait casting reels. Maybe some of you out there have that. The first one is a Sitka. It's a Shimano. Anthony tells me that we got a problem here, and I see it already. I see a line guide that's moving, but a spool that isn't. So that ought to be interesting in terms of doing some problem diagnosis and repair. The third one here is a Shimano Tranx. And in this case, I'm told the line guide isn't holding. I mean, it's moving but not holding apparently. So we'll take that apart and we'll work on those. And then lastly, the one we're going to work on today that's found its way to the pandemic projects is a kind of a holy grail reel. It's the Newell reel. Newell was made by Carl Newell out in California. Carl was an engineer, and Carl took upon himself to design his reel for saltwater fishing. A lot of people think that he worked for Penn. He did not, but he was an engineer in plastics, and he came out with ways to improve the lightness of the reel through graphite. High quality reel. He uses stainless steel parts inside. Unfortunately, it's been some time since his passing, and even parts are hard to get for these days. So we're going to take this apart. We'll show you how it's made, why everybody likes it, and we'll show you how to tune it up if you happen to have one of these. So we're going to start by taking the handle off. This is an American threaded size, SAE, as opposed to most of the metrics that we see. It's a 9/16 wrench. And you have a little water collar behind it here. You want to take that off. And this is how you can tell a commercial reel generally from your average angler. The reel is kind of stuck together. It hasn't been maintained well. There's a lot of salt and grime and grease buildup in it, and that always leads to kind of fish them until they fail kind of mentality. And I guess, you know, if you got a fleet, you're on every day. You get in, you hose your boat down, you go home, and do it again tomorrow. So that's what leads to a lot of this. It's not intentional neglect, but it is a problem in that these things don't get repaired maybe when they should. Okay, I have a C-clip on here that I'm just working around. I should be able to get this off because there's a little bit of a there's kind of a belly here where you can go through it. This isn't the original Newell handle. I don't know if I have one of them nearby. I do have some Newell parts. Not many. They are getting kind of rare. Yeah, here's your, this would be your Newell handle. It's a whole different look, but either that one broke or he just was trying to find a leveraged handle for it. I'm not sure what. Doesn't matter. It works. Do this again. Probably should take that off. Okay, so as typical of the way that I do my reels, I like to take most of the external parts off before. It's just easier for me to work on them that way. You could remove the side plate, work around the star adjuster and the like, and then take them off afterwards, but I just have this little pattern that I use. If something else works better for you, just go right ahead and do that. And we're going to pull that off. Then we're going to get 3 side plate screws. And again, you can kind of see, or I can see, it might be more difficult on your view, but I can see that there's salt buildup there. So some folks may say, gee, my gosh, that's a classic. Everybody wants one of these. You probably have to pay $200-300 for one of these today. Why didn't you take better care of it? You know what? Some folks just fish them till they drop and get them repaired, and if that's the way that you want to treat the reel, that's okay too. I prefer to try and take care of mine, but I completely understand how the commercial fishery works. I do a number of fishing boats, and quite honestly, they just don't have the time to put in to do it the way you or I would have done it if this is our personal reel. Having said all of that, it's a beautiful reel. This is kind of like the DeLorean car. It's gonna be hard for it to rust. Almost all the pieces are stainless or graphite. High quality materials in them that just are built to last. Okay, 3 side plate screws. The side plate should then come off. Well, and I can see what's going on here. You say I'm having trouble with my free spool. That's probably because the spool is stuck. So let's see if we can kind of put this into... Sometimes we can work it out with our strength, sometimes we can't. I'm not even going to fool around with that. This may be a frozen spool gear. That's usually the culprit for this. So the thing to do in terms of a frozen gear, and it's interesting, somebody just wrote me a note this morning, said they have a Pen 209. They can't remove the spool. Well, this is very timely because we'll show you how that works out. So I'm taking the pieces off of there, and in order to make this work, then you have to remove the bridge from the back. You can't pull this way. Never ever recommend, you know, putting a wedge in behind and trying to wedge it out or something. It's just not worth the effort. If it's frozen, then there's a cure for it. It's not easy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Gets me a little concerned because it's Newell, so if you break apart in here, it's going to be hard to replace it. I probably have to go to like an eBay or some aftermarket place to get that. But every one of the reels that Anthony gave me has a problem. And again, that's kind of like the fish it until it falls apart kind of thing. You saw on the 2 bait casters there that the problems are in the level line feature. You saw the problems on the 2 toriums that need drags, and one has a broken free spool lever. So yeah, they only make it to me when they make it off the rod, and they only make it off the rod if the piece is broken. I just laid those out on the desk, and here's why. I tell you continually to check when you take the side plate screws off if they're all the same size. In this case, they're not. So you need to make a note where those screws came from. In this case, it's kind of easy because they're staggered. There's one that's the short screw, and then the long screw goes on the enhanced bridge. And but you need to note sometimes it's just one of them that's odd. And we should be able to get this out now. Just trying to press without hurting anything here. Well, we're going to go underneath the bridge here and kind of use the case. That should help. There we go. I just heard it snap out. There's a little kind of plastic post that these things ride on, and that's what's causing this. Yeah. So what we have right now is we have a frozen bearing, and it looks like we have a frozen spool gear. So let's see what, if anything, we can get off of here first. The bearing is spinning, but the inner race of the bearing is no good. So we're going to hose this down with some WD-40. That's the first trick. And we're going to let it sit. So I'm going to turn off the video right now. We're going to let this sit, and we're going to come back to this. Okay, so let's write this one to old age. I don't remember exactly where I left this. There was a bearing on top of here that was frozen. We had hosed it down with WD-40. And I thought that I had worked it out. I used a torch to heat it, and I used a pair of pliers to grasp it, and unfortunately this is the result of that bearing. So the bearing was stuck on there, the collar was stuck on there, and the reel obviously didn't operate as a result, because when you went to free spool, this would only pull to the point where the bearing was, and then it wouldn't release. So Anthony, it's your lucky day. I happen to have the bearing, and boy, if that isn't interesting in and of itself. So I have the bearing for this, so we'll continue with the maintenance on that. Okay, I'm just going to put that in a side plate. It belongs in there. And let's do what we would normally do then. Now I can remove the spool, so that's what the issue was there. And I apologize, I just didn't remember exactly where I stopped it. I probably should have just gone back and reset the video and tried to do it again. I'm going to pull off the stack here. That'll show us what's typical. These reels, high quality reels all about. We have a C-clip for the main post, so we're going to take that off. We're going to service underneath. And I just have my tools of destruction here. That's tools of last resort. I don't recommend anybody go ahead and use fire on their torches, but sometimes you just have to. We're just going to take a moment here. I got a lot of tools out here on my desk that don't need to be here, just so I can work back to getting my pick. Okay, so let's remove that C-clip then. And you got to be careful with all these small parts. Again, just like that bearing, I got lucky on that one. Anthony got lucky on that one. But if you don't have that bearing, if you don't take care, you could have some trouble with it. So here's an accumulation of grease and grime and junk and the like. So we're going to grab a cotton swab and go in here and do this. And look at that stainless. You had all this muck and junk in here, and it all just came right off. Isn't that it's a beautiful thing? That's why folks love these reels. Okay, we're going to take the yoke assembly with the spool gear there. That got some junk there. So again, we've got these little clips on here. They're holding springs in. When you remove that clip, hold that spring, because if you don't, you'll be doing what I just did with that bearing on the floor there, just go and look for it. I'll do that another time here. And they all go on my parts tray. Now we can remove the bridge and the spool gear. Just again, we want to clear that the garbage, the old grease. And with a commercial reel, it's probably old grease and a little bit of everything else that goes along with his fishing trips. So now we can get the rest of the dog there. Remove that and get the collar cleaned up. So a lot of reel repairs you're all seeing is just cleaning, right? Sometimes like this, it was a little bit more dramatic. And again, I apologize if I came in late on where I was with that spool cleanup, but forgetful from time to time. Okay, so we've cleaned out the inside of this. You want to do that because of the spool, especially because it was sticking in here. So let's take a little steel wool and let's just make sure it's nice and smooth. We know it was the bearing that was the problem, so we can come down here to where the bearing rests. And we can clean that up, make sure, you can run your finger over it, make sure that it's nice and smooth the way it should be. Okay, then we'll grab a brush and some fishing reel grease. Load that onto the shaft, get that shaft back on there. You want to just notice as I'm putting the shaft on that the anti-reverse dog was on the wrong side of the shaft, so just go ahead and move that dog up so that it can properly seat and that you have the retainer there. And I separated those in my parts tray. I put the one C-clip up top and the others below, just so I knew which one went where. Okay, that's that. Okay, so let's work on that, the yoke and spool gear. Check that spool gear first. You want to lubricate that. You want to check the teeth, make sure all the teeth are correct, which they are. And you want to grab the yoke, do the same thing, put some grease onto the yoke so that it rides smoothly. These ramps go out. If you had any question about that, you can go check the pictures that you're taking along the way. And then the insert, or the indentation in this, goes to the front of the reel. And then this is kind of an interesting one, where most yokes do the free spool by pushing down and pushing the yoke out. This one actually pulls it up. There's a ramp here you can see on the jack, and as you move your lever, you can see how it disengages the pinion gear or spool gear from the shaft. And that's what was happening as it was coming back this way. It was bumping into the frozen bearing, so all fixed. This bearing is sealed. You don't need to do anything with it. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease into the fringe of it. We'll do it another way too when we get to the spool. From a cleaning standpoint, on these, same idea. This case doesn't seem to have too much buildup, but it has enough, so clean it out. Make sure you get all the excess junk off of there, and then the case can go get reinstalled. Now these are nice. These use the HT100s from the Jigmaster. So one of the things that Carl Newell did was design the main gear the same specifications as the Jigmaster. Maybe that's why people think he worked for Penn. But these are the same Penn Jigmaster drags, so if you ever need to replace them, you have a Newell reel, you can do that. Lots of crud underneath, right? So it tells you this thing is heavily fished and it hasn't been worked much. Steel wool. That generally is what will take it down, get rid of the junk. This is 4.0 steel wool. Don't go any coarser than the finest that there is. I'm going to use a little scraping tube. Not easy. This is why a lot of folks, manufacturers, won't even accept commercial reels. They'll tell you that the commercial use of the reel for commercial purposes is voiding the warranty, and there's no service on them or that, because they just know it's going to take a long time to get them done, and they're probably going to come in looking like this, I guess. But I don't mind doing it. Like I said, I do it for a couple of boats, and we have a good working relationship. So once you get doing that enough, then the reels that are coming in have been worked on a regular basis, and you don't have to worry about it too much. All right, so we're in good condition with this now. There's some tarnish on here, but it's nice and smooth. I'm running my fingers through it. Do the same thing on this gear that we did on the other one. Check to make sure all the teeth are there and straight, not chipped or cracked. I wouldn't expect it on this one because it's a stainless gear, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. I'm going to use Cal's Universal Dry Grease to freshen up these washers. It's been a long time since this reel has seen anything like that, so let's go ahead and make sure that while we're servicing it, that it's done right. I dipped the washer into the grease. I smeared it around with my gloved hand so I don't get the junk on my hand. I wipe off the excess, and then I place that into the cavity for the main gear. These have a little bit of tarnish on them as well, so we'll clean that off with the steel wool. Again, these are stainless drag washers, so nice, right? The quality is there. So you can see why in today's marketplace these still command a high level of price, especially for the age of the reel. All right, first one is a round one. Do that second washer. Do the same thing. Now the dry grease is basically to keep the washer flexible, and that's why we're doing this. You have a middle washer now, which is an eared washer. It has a round circle, so it never grabs the shaft, but it has the pivot points to hold the drag, the gear in place. And then we'll do that last one. Wipe off the excess. And this one has two things going now. It has a round washer, which is the third one. That's typical of the setup. And then it has what some people refer to as a bell washer. It's because it looks like a bell. It's got it's concave, it's not flat, and the rise or the peak of that goes to the top. All right. So this is a whole lot better than it was when we started. This is pretty simple now. Everything is in place, so all we have to do is just realign it to the case and put that in. Just notice there's a little bit more grease there, which means there's a little bit more grease onto the lever here. And we're ready to reinstall this then. Okay, once we line that up, we can go put the screws back in. And this is where it was important to notice that the two short screws belonged up top, two long screws belong below. And we'll go ahead and tighten those down in a north, south, east, west kind of pattern, or in this case an X pattern, the way I'm showing it to you here. Before I go too much further, I just want to make sure it turns nicely. It does. We had the metal collar that went on next. Oops. That was a major oops. So let's take this off because we didn't put the rest of the yoke back together. How do you like that? You know? You get what you pay for when you watch these videos. It's this is live, real time, not edited, and confirms that we're all human. So we're going to take the screws out of this case. That's why I recommend the parts tray, because you can, at a glance, you can see that you've either done it all or you haven't done it all, and you can go back and adjust. So for those of you that have been watching closely and saying, when is Dennis going to grab those springs and put them in? Well, you got your answer now. All right, those springs belong on here. I'm going to go ahead and put those back on. And each one of those, as you know, has a little C-clip that goes on top. Now this is kind of fun because you got to press down on that spring while you're putting the C-clip in place, and as you load that spring, there's always a chance that it's going to shoot off. And actually I'm going to take my glove off for this because I kind of need my fingernail to do that, not that I have much. If you have large hands like I do, this is not the place, or not your favorite exercise. So this may take a minute. For those of you that saw me put the case back on, you might want to go get a cup of coffee, and we'll come on back for the exciting conclusion. There you go, one's on. Those of you that want to stick around, I appreciate you watching. So while we're doing this, you know, I'm asked a lot about you know, fishing reel repair, and you know, some folks are a little intimidated by some of the reels. If you have a reel that needs to be reconditioned, maybe it's a family heirloom or something, and you want it fixed, but you don't want to do it yourself, I've been asked, do I repair reels? And the answer is yes, I do. Obviously, I'm working on this one for Anthony. And go ahead and contact me through the information on my business card at the back end of this video, and I'll be happy to give you the instructions on where to send the reel and answer any questions you may have. Okay, now we're going to do it again. Long ones below, short ones above. Back on track with the video, so I hope if you went and got a coffee, you've rejoined us. If not, you still have about 30 seconds because you saw me put these screws in before. So Newell made a couple of different sizes. This one kind of is equivalent to the Penn Squitter. It also made a different series that was larger. It was kind of comparable to the Penn Long Beach series or the Penn Jigmaster series. They're all highly sought after in terms of a reel. The ball bearing construction on each side of this makes this a great casting reel, and a lot of folks thoroughly enjoy doing just that. Okay, next up then we have the adjuster. We have the tension rings. There's 2 tension rings here. That's controls the pressure for the drag washer or the star drag, and those. It's been a while, but I remember enough. I guess that's the key part. Trim ring. Now these can go on top. Okay, the back, all we have is a bearing. The rest of this is pretty much just a click ring, which you can't see because it's black on black there. And it's a plastic one. So again, Newell with his understanding of plastics and the like did a good job on this one. I'm just cleaning a little bit of the other pieces out here. Alright, we're coming to the moment of truth here. So we have a spool. Let's just make sure that that's clean on both sides. Because this got stuck, I want to make sure that it's clean. It got stuck here if you remember, so let's clean that up. I'm going to put a little bit of grease, even though they're both getting housed into bearings. I'm going to put the grease here because the spool gear got stuck there. Now that wasn't the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem was the bearing, but regardless. Lining it up here. Nice snap in. There's one that goes through that belongs up top, and there's 2 that seat onto screws, so we'll make sure we got that one too. Two on the side. Okay, there you go. Spin the spool. I'm going to just load down on the star adjuster. Tighten that all up. There you go. Anthony, you're back in business. All right, ready to go help your customers catch fish. And I just use the 4.0 on this to pretty that up. You can see the salt water built up from not flushing this out on a regular basis. At this point I'm just going to use some WD-40 to kind of dissolve that. load the handle, load the little cap, grab the big cap, and that's your Newell. That's how you service it. That's a look inside the reel. Hopefully you'll avoid some of the steps that I did. Hopefully you won't have a frozen spool bearing or anything, and if you run into a problem, hopefully you're going to have the wherewithal here to find the bearing that you needed and make this a successful project all around. So just going to tighten this down. Give it a couple of cranks here, make sure. It's hard to show on a video just how smooth this reel is and the limited effort that it's taking to just roll this. It's just tough to show, but it's just such a nice, easy throwing reel. And this is why it's a casting favorite. That's just a nice, easy spin, ball bearing on both sides. If you needed to adjust the ball bearing, that would be done through the adjuster here, the spool actually. And actually that is a little tight, so I'm just going to back that off a little bit. You want just a little bit of play in those. Yeah, and you can just see that it's just spinning forever. Okay, there you go. That's the Newell 229-5 with a side trip to free a frozen bearing, complete take apart and service. And again, if you have a reel that you'd like to have serviced, then by all means contact me by email through the business card that follows. With that, I hope everybody's staying safe, doing exactly what our authorities are asking us to do during this pandemic, proper hygiene, all that other sort of good stuff, and tuning up your reels, getting ready for when they give us the okay to go back fishing. So I hope you enjoy your day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.